So, in this tutorial, you will find a new file and folder located in this week's tutorial session, where I have re-added a blank scene like this, where these files are now working, so you will no longer need to have to set up those files, and hopefully we can sort of get straight back into the modeling. So, where do we start? Going over the key sort of controls and movements to start with. If you push Alt or Command and the left mouse button, so Command if you're on Mac, and drag at the same time, you'll be able to rotate the viewport. If you push the middle mouse button, scroll the middle mouse button, you'll be able to zoom in and zoom out. And if you hold Alt and the right mouse button and drag forward and backwards, you'll be able to do the same thing. You have to pan closer, and if you hold Alt or Command and middle mouse button and drag, you'll be able to pan across in the viewport. So they are your basic functions, so just remember to hold Alt or Command and play around with the mouse buttons, and eventually you will find what it is you are looking for as you get used to it. So, other controls, on the left hand side here you'll see the different selection tools. So, and we have the translate, rotate and scale tool. Now these tools match up to our QWERTY keyboard. Q is our select tool here, which allows us to select and click and drag and highlight. So again, we'll have to move around like that. Our W hotkey, so these are on the keyboard, brings up the translate tool, which allows us to translate our objects in physical space. E brings up the rotate tool, again, so we can bring that up. And R brings up the scale tool, which allows us then to change the scale of our objects. Okay. So QWERTY, the Q, W, E and R, and our Alt or Command and mouse buttons are the primary buttons that we're going to use throughout the development of our projects. I strongly recommend that you get used to these very quickly, because otherwise you may find that you slow down and lag behind, and your workflow takes much longer to complete. So our buttons match up. So our move, our rotate and our scale tools, our W, E and R, match up with the channel box inputs on the left hand side. And as you'll notice, as I click on these, it will automatically bring up that control in the middle here, for whichever one it is. So you will notice certain parts are highlighted yellow as I select. So if you keep your eye on this as I go through X, Y and Z, and the yellow basically means that's the lane or the channel that we have selected, the direction we have selected. So where do we begin? So today, and for your first sort of modelling lesson, we are going to start with the sort of traditional process for modelling characters, which was the box modelling process. Okay, and it basically involves starting with a cube and sculpting and fleshing that out until we have a torso. You may want to continue and do the whole of the model in that process, but over the next few lessons we are going to be looking at different modelling techniques. So where to begin? So we want to create a cube within our scene, and there are a couple of ways to do that. The first one, the most obvious one, would be to go to our shelf that we find at the top of the screen. Now you'll find two different types of cubes available on the shelf. We have our cube here, which is our NURBS surface or surface cube, and we have our polygons, and we are going to work with our polygons. Now obviously the shelf is here for convenience, which is perfectly fine to use, but with each version of Autodesk Maya these tend to change, and between this and the last version have changed quite rapidly. So I would like you to get used to using the menu set at the top of the screen, as these will be invaluable for if you are ever trying to find a specific tool or anything else that I may mention. So currently we don't have our modeling toolkit, our modeling tool, sorry, not toolkit, our modeling tools are along the top. I'm going to get that ready in anticipation. So I'm going to drop down the arrow and go to modeling, which brings up our modeling tools which will help us later on. So to create a cube, I'm going to go up to create, and you'll see our menu here. Now at the top of the menu you'll see this little bar, and if I select that, it's going to bring out a pop-out menu, okay, for us to use and retain on our user interface. And I'm going to go down to polygon primitives, and that's the type of modeling we're going to use throughout this project. And again, I can click that small shelf if I want to keep this one and close that, and I'm going to click cube, and that will pop a cube in the center of the screen. Okay, we also have the interactive option, which allows us to draw whichever cube size we want, but for now we're just going to keep that off and stick with the cube that we have in the center. So a couple of things that we're going to do. We are going to actually set our preferences. So if we go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and go to Preferences, okay, and if we go to Alt Undo, and by default this will be on 50. I would like you to take your queue size to 200, okay, which will give us plenty of undos to do should there be any mistakes. And we should be ready. Click Save and we're good to go. So our object, the first thing we're going to do is rename our object, okay, so we're going to call this torso. And the reason for this is your scenes can get very messy and we don't want it to be that. My character is called Buddy, so I'm going to call this Buddy Torso. Okay, so naming conventions and good file management and asset management is going to be absolutely essential when working within a group or team of people, and in most cases, in almost every case, working on large scenes. Okay, so I'm going to push W on the keyboard, so I'm going to move my cube around, and what I'm going to do is just pull this up in between somewhere around there. I don't know if it's going to be accurate yet, but we're going to test that out in a second. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to panels, and I want to change my view. I want to see this from the side view. So I'm going to go to panels, and I'm going to go down to orthographic, and I'm going to go click side. So these are our camera options, and we can create new ones if we wish. But right now we are just going to use this side. Okay, and you'll see we've got our grid. We can see our image, and it is quite bright, and it is a bit difficult to sort of make this out. This grid is very, very distracting. So I'm going to go to this little grid here. I'm going to select that and turn that off. And push W again if you have lost your translate tool, and we're just going to reposition our cube there. And then we're going to go back to panel, orthographic and front. And this time I think I'm just going to keep that around here. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go back to our perspective view. So go to panel, perspective, persp, and I'm just going to now increase this slightly. I'm going to have the width as 2, so I'll put 4 in there, so 2. So I'm going to select, if you can't see that, by the way, you can select inputs, which will open up this polycube input here, and we're going to have the width at 2, the height at 4, and the depth at 4. Okay, which should give us a nice broad box. And within that, I'm going to have my split at 2, my subdivision width at 2, my subdivision height at 3, and my depth at 2. Now, what we want to do is, when we are modelling, okay, is to be able to do everything on this side of the body happen on the other side of the body, as our character is symmetrical. At the moment, that is not the case. That is not happening. And there are a couple of ways to do this. You could mirror or use symmetry mode. But for now, we are going to use our duplicate mode. Okay, and there's a special kind of duplicate that will allow us to reference the one side and do it on the other. Okay. Now, the first thing we need to do is notice that first thing I want you to notice, sorry, is that these are not at 0. Okay, I want this point in space to be its home point. So to do that, we need to freeze all of this information back to default, so it treats this spot in the physical space as 0. So if we go to select our object and we go to modify and we go down to freeze transformations, that will reset all of those values back to 0. And if we move our object now and type 0 again, it will take us back to where it is. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and delete this side of the object. So we're going to go to panels, orthographic and front, and we are going to hold down our right mouse button and we're going to go to face. Once we have gone to face, we're going to click and drag and select all of those and push delete. And if we hold down our right mouse button again and go to object mode, it will take us back to our object. As you can see, our pivot point is in the middle and we have a blank side on the left. This is great, this is exactly what we want. So I'm going to go back to perspective mode, and now it's time to duplicate it. So yes, it will be hollow, we want it to be hollow. So I've seen people in the past sort of fill these in. We don't want to fill this space in, so keep that empty. And we're going to duplicate that. So we're going to go to edit and we're going to go down to duplicate special, and we're not going to select duplicate special, we want to go into the settings. So I'm just going to reset these. So what we're going to do, so okay, we could by default make a default copy which will literally just copy this side and nothing else. We won't be able to copy our actions onto that, we won't be able to change anything on that. It will be a separate object that we can't mimic at the same time. If we change this geometry sort to an instance, it will reference, and that means that everything we do on the original object will happen on the duplicated ones, and that's exactly what we want to happen. Now, going further down, we have translate, rotate and scale. These simply work like in the order of the alphabet, where we go X, Y and Z, X, Y and Z, X, Y and Z. Now in our X scale, because we know it's X because we have a red arrow. So a red arrow is anything that's red is X, anything that is green is Y, anything that is blue is Z. And because this is red down here, we know, obviously I've selected there, if it's selected it will change colour. Because that is red, we know that we want to move that in X. And if we just to do that now, click apply, you'll see like nothing has happened. Well, actually it has happened. It has created a copy object, but we don't want that. Okay, we actually want it to appear this side. So in the scale X, we're going to put -1, which will create an invert. It will invert it, will turn it inside out and pop it out the other side. Now because we have it as a instance, if I go to hold down my right mouse button and go to Vertex and select this, we can see everything we do on the right happens on the left. Okay, which is perfect. That is what we want. We want to be able to copy everything we are doing. Okay, so with that in mind and that now done, we are now ready to start manipulating our objects. So while we're still in vertex mode, we're going to go back to panel, orthographic, and we're going to go to side. Now obviously we want to be able to line up some of these vertices against the body, but the issue that we have is that our view, we can't see through it. So we can change our shading options in our display by going to shading and going to X-ray, in which now we can see through this body, and that's exactly what we want to do. Now for this part and this stage, we're going to use our W, E and R. So that's our translate tool, E, which is our rotate tool, and R, which is our scale tool. Now the first thing I'm going to do is drag and select. So left mouse button, click, drag and let go. So click and drag and let go. And I'm going to line up this sort of curve that I have down the center of the body. Okay, I'm not at this stage particularly overly fussed with perfecting this, but it's important that we get this initial curve in the center forming down the body. And I'm going to take this right up to this neck, because obviously this is where we want our neck to come out of, and I'm going to move these pieces in. Or alternatively, I can drag the whole up, push R, bring up the scale tool, and scale them in. Okay. With these middle ones here, we'll bring this across. We're going to bring this up slightly. We're going to actually select these independently, and same again with these. So bring that there, and we're going to take these in here. So we have quite a round S-shaped figure happening, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to now go to the front view, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to align these up. Now you may be thinking it's quite hard to see with this side not showing, so if actually we go to this option here, which is next to this checker box, and select that, it will actually bring up a wireframe, and we can sort of see what is happening now on both sides. And again, we're just going to bring that out. Again, I think our pictures might be a little bit out of sync, they may not be. I'm going to bring this in. We obviously want to build out of here and have our legs come through. And yeah, I think that's looking okay. So if we go back to perspective mode, we'll be able to see our overall object. Okay, and it's looking okay. We've got our basic sort of mesh there, and we are almost ready now to start adding some more edges in, edge loops as we call them, and starting to actually flesh out this overall shape. So I'm going to go back to the side view, and the first thing I'm going to focus on is creating the upper part of the torso. So I'm going to go to across, make sure I've got my modeling selection selected, go to edit mesh, and we want edit mesh, or mesh tool, sorry. And I'm going to just click out this top bar and pop out these options here. And down this list you'll see an option called insert edge loop. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to click and drag on these on the line. So you can't click and drag in the open space and try and add any of these in, it will not work. You have to go to these edges, and you can click on, try and get that, there we go. And we've got a little bit of lag here, so we'll go and do that. So again, and there we go, and we can move this, we can left mouse button click and drag up and down, and we can just pop this in wherever we like. So I'm going to place this one here, and I'm just going to add another edge loop in up here. Okay, so I'm now going to right mouse button click and go back into my vertex mode, and I'm going to reposition these. So I'm going to click and drag the vertices, keep W held in. I'm going to just pull this one back. I'm going to go and pull this one forward. I'm going to pull this one in, following that curvature coming down. I'm going to click and drag this one here. I'm going to tighten the neck area up, and again just keep bringing this in and just making it feel a little bit more natural. Okay, and down the back, I'm actually going to bring this piece right down, and you'll see here we have actually drawn on this crease. I'm going to bring this down to around here, and again just going to bring that around to there. I'm going to bring this one up, and I'm actually going to bring this one probably down a little bit more. I'm actually going to take that down just a tiny little bit more as well, so it beats down. And again, I'm just going to lower this a little bit. So again, the good thing about this type of modelling, which is organic modelling, is we want to keep everything moving smoothly and in curves, keep everything round, because obviously the human body is not straight and fixed and inorganic, as we call it, where we're using straight lines. Nature doesn't, in almost every case, does not create things that are perfectly straight. There are some exceptions, such as crystals in the caves in South America, but again, these are very few and very rare exceptions to that rule. So with adding that in and defining that shape there, I'm going to go ahead now, go to my front view, so perspective, orthographic, and go to front. As you can see, it's now looking very messy, and you're thinking, well, what is going on? Just remember, we've actually offset some of these loops now, so they are going to fall down and behind. So this is where we have to start paying close attention to what we actually have and what we actually have done. Okay, so in this 3D view, I'm actually going to add another edge loop going in down the front of the torso. So I'm going to go back to my insert edge loop tool with my menu set here. If you've accidentally closed this off, we can get that back by going to mesh tools and popping it out again. And we're going to go to insert edge loop, and we're just going to go across and pop one in right in the middle there, which is cool. Now if we just take a look at this from above, you'll see that this is very square, okay, going all the way around. We don't want this. I'm just going to turn off the X-ray just so you can see this in a little bit more detail. I'm going to hold right mouse button, go to object mode, and I'm just going to very quickly turn this off. It's very square, and we don't want this to be square, we want this to be round. We want this to look nice and smooth and nice and curved. And the way that we're going to do that is to actually take in these corner pieces, okay? So we can do this by selecting them all, but obviously the greater distance this travels, it's going to happen over here, and we could end up crossing over our vertices. So if I was to say select all of these edges, for example, oops, the wrong one, and so don't do this, I'm just demonstrating, and I was to move these in a little bit, although it's only a small amount over here, it's actually lots up here that, you know, and I could eventually cross over like that, and we don't want that. So we kind of have to be a little bit more careful and a little bit more controlled. So we're going to go into vertex mode, and we're going to select each of these corner vertexes. Oh, I need to undo that again. There we go. So vertex mode, and we're just going to take in each of these just very casually. Nothing too much. We don't want to go over the top. We don't want to be too extreme with that. And we'll do these two ones together as they're sort of closely related with that breast muscle. Okay. And again, I'm just going to bring that across, bring that in. Okay. And it's got this bottom piece to do as well. And I'm just going to take this one in this way because we haven't done that yet. That's cool. And then we're going to do that same thing on the back. So just take it one way, take it the other, take it in again. And obviously we can tweak these up a bit later on, we can make it a little bit more tidier. And it's quite a large character, so those of you that are looking to a bit more of a manly torso, I can do another video for that, which is not a problem at all, just to sort of give you a bit of guidance. Right, so I'm going to take that in slightly there, not too much, not as much as that, I don't think. Actually no, yeah, we'll take it in a little bit. Right. Okay, so again, we've just taken that in, we've taken those in, and obviously with this sort of centre line, I do want to just bring it out just a tiny bit, nothing too extreme, just to make it feel that little bit more rounder, so just a little tiny bit. So I'm going to go back to my object mode now, and I'm just going to make sure there's no sort of sharp points from any angle. So if we go look from the top, we've got this sort of cylinder shape happening, which means it is round. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's looking cool. Right then, so next sort of stage is to start thinking about building out our shoulders. Okay, now we have our breast muscle sort of having around here and our sort of neck area coming around here, and in between this we're going to set up our arm. Okay, so I want to go back into our side view. I'm going to turn back on our x-rays so we can see through, and with this section here I'm going to go back into vertex mode, so hold down the right mouse button, go to vertex and click and drag and select this area here, I'm just going to take it down a touch. Okay, and it fits in there quite nicely. I'm then going to push E, and I'm going to not just select any area, because you can see this happens and we don't want to do that. We just want to select this red area here, and I'm just literally going to tilt it about 5 degrees. Okay, nothing too drastic. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go back into object mode. So hold the right mouse button, object mode, and you will find that you'll flip between these modes constantly, by the way. And we're going to select offset edge loop, and that's the wrong one. So Control Z is undo. Okay, as it is in most programs, it will be your best friend and your lifesaver. So once you've if you've done that, click undo. Go to insert edge loop, not offset edge loop, insert edge loop, and then I've selected the select tool, just so I can hold right click and go to vertex mode. I'm going to push W for my so the translate tool, and I'm literally just going to bring these round and just make that a little bit rounder. Now what we want to do here is actually create a sort of circle shape, okay, with just these front vertices. We don't want to select the vertices behind it, we just want to create it with these, and we are literally just going to make it round. Okay, and this is going to form our arm shape. Okay, now with that done, and going back, we are going to actually borrow off another modelling technique, which we're going to go into more detail in the next lesson, and that is extrusion modelling. Okay, so we'll go into more detail about that next week, as I say, but for now what we're going to do is hold down the right mouse button, go to object mode, go to face, and I'm just going to quickly turn this back on so you can see, and we're going to select these faces here. I'm going to turn the shading off. This is for you, you can leave it on if you like, but this is more for your benefit. So you can see we have this round shape selected, and we're going to click go to extrude. So if we go to edit mesh, go down to extrude, as you can see that it says Control E, so that means that is a shortcut, and it's going to have extruded the face. Now we can't see anything at the moment, but what we can do is start to pull this out, and you'll see it's extruded those faces. Now as you can see, as I pull this out, it gets bigger and bigger. Okay, and the reason it does that is because it's looking at these angles from where we extrude from, and it's sort of keeping with it, and but we don't want that. So just up here you'll see this little blue icon, and if you click that, it will change the tool into world mode, which means X is X going across. It's not being averaged out by the points on these faces, by these vertices. So if we put across, it will go straight across, and that's what we want. So we're going to put it out to about here, and with our this little square here, our scale tool, so we have this circle here which I call rotate, we have our translate tool, and we also have our scale tool. With our scale X, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to straighten that up. Okay, take it to the middle here, and it will straighten that up. Okay, and what we're actually going to do is twist this over. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my front view, and I'm actually just going to go back into shading mode because the brightness is really high and it's kind of hurting my eyes. I'm going to select the rotate tool by clicking on this outside circle, and I want to select this rotate Z, where you can see the blue. So I'm going to click that once, it will select it, and then we're going to rotate this round. Okay, we're going to rotate our shoulders out, and then I'm going to push W, bring up the translate tool, and I'm going to bring that in. Don't worry at the moment that it's not quite matching up with everything there. We will sort of tweak that up a little bit later on. Right now what we're interested in is creating our shoulder, and you can see that it's not very tidy, it's not looking very tidy at all, and so we're going to start to tidy that up by using our vertexes. So our shoulder is like this, and this is going to form, these bits here are going to form the top of our arm. So the first thing we want to do really is to start lining these back up. So if we go to the top and we start just left mouse button selecting these points. Okay, and we can just start to bring them across. And you'll find when you're working in 3D software that you will define things, you will take them back to their sort of inorganic form, and then you'll break them back up again into more organic forms. And it's a constant swapping and changing process, but it's one that you will go through a lot in order to create perfectionism, because we are sculpting, we are trying to create a soft and round and beautiful object out of something that by default isn't. So I've brought that back in with our shoulder bit here. I'm going to drag and select and push R. I'm just going to straighten those up. Okay, so again we're going back to inorganic forms, as I've said, and we're just going to tidy that up here. I'm going to bring this one in as well, just bring it up, and with this last piece as well we're going to do exactly the same thing. Okay, and we are now starting to define our shoulders, which is great. Okay, which is exactly what we want. And I'm just going to straighten these bits up here. Oh, I've selected another piece there which we don't want. So if you hold shift, you can add to selection, and if you want to remove something from the selection, hold shift and click it again. I just want to select these, try and straighten that. That's not doing much. There we go. Okay, right, and yeah, we're getting there slowly. So with our shoulder piece here being finished here, again what we want to do is now create the circle bit here. What you'll notice is we're missing two side pieces that we need to achieve that, and the way we are going to do that is by adding, I think we may need to add in a loop coming around, and I'm just going to delete these two faces for now, just to make it a little bit more obvious that this is where our arm is going to go. But we need two more lines. Now we could just add in lines coming down here, but I don't want to add those in there. What I want to do is to bring another loop in. So I'm actually going to draw this on. So we're going to actually use part of the modeling toolkit, which we're going to look at in later tutorials in more detail, and use it probably much more detail. But in this in this tutorial, we're just going to click the show modeling toolkit, and it's the multi-cut tool down here. Okay, so this modeling toolkit is really cool. It's a new feature in the last version of Autodesk Maya, but has really sort of come on leaps and bounds since then. I've really got into using it. A lot of people have been a bit resistant, but again, I've really enjoyed working with this tool quite recently. This toolkit, which is basically a collection of the common tools that you will use. My only wish was that they had insert edge loop. So with the multi-cut, we are literally going to go and select it, and we're going to draw another circle. It's just coming around here. Okay, so I'm going to start midway here, and you'll see it puts this little blue square on. If I click this next one, it will add a loop in there, and we're literally just going to go around and add this loop in. Okay, like this. And the reason we want to add this loop in and have it going round is that we want a nice, lovely looking curve going around the arm. Okay, and we're just going to build all that in, and you can see now we have a lovely circle going around. I'm going to push enter on the keyboard, or the return key, okay, whichever you are used to calling it. Now this has solved a problem and created one. Okay, it solved one in that we now have an extra padding around our arm, which is going to create a nice deformation, which I'll explain in a later tutorial to you. But the other issue that was created is that we have these triangles. These were also known as tries. So tries are anything with three sides, and they don't. deform very well. They collapse in on each other. And we like quads. Our quads are what make the program run nice and run smooth. Okay. And what we want to do is essentially remove them. Okay. We need to get rid of these. So in order to do that, we've just got to reconfigure where they run to. Okay. So I'm going to click on this edge. I'm going to double click, and what that will allow us to do is fill this hole in. So I want to go to mesh. I'm going to go to fill hole. Okay. And once we've filled that, we're just going to go back to our multi-cut tool, and we're just going to line this up here, and we're going to we'll leave that there for now. And we essentially, what we want to do is bring this line going across here, and I'll probably add another line going across. Okay, so let's work out, how did I do this earlier? So I think I added these here to create going across. Did I do that? I can't remember. Right, 1 second. So I'm just going to quickly delete this face. And I think I may have added a line in here, but obviously we need it to go across here. I just can't remember now what I did. And you'll find this when you're making a model, that you will reroute or rebuild things in different ways, and obviously it's always a sort of just working out a case of where did I put that, where did I put that flow, where did I create that edge, how did I get that to work, you know. And again, you know, you go through these. It's a problem-solving process that you go through every time. It's quite late now, and I am tired. It's been a long day, so essentially we just need to bring this piece up here, and yeah, so I think what we can do is, okay, I'm going to pause and I'm going to come back to this. Okay, so I'm back, and I've worked it out. Very simple fix. My brain's obviously very tired at this time, and it just kind of slipped me. So so we're going to go to the multi-cut tool, and we're going to actually select this face here by left mouse button clicking, well, this vertex, sorry, not face, and we're going to literally select this one here, and we're going to push enter, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side there, and push enter again. And this time we're just going to select this endpoint here, and if we select this last one, it'll actually build this one in for us, and we're going to push enter again. And if we go around here and select this one, go around to here and push enter again, it will add that in. And if we go down to right mouse button click and right mouse button hold and go down to face, delete that face there and delete this face here, you'll see we've got our 4 sides, which means we can have a quad. And so if we double click that, it will select the whole loop, go to mesh and go down to fill hole, and it will fill that in for us. And the same thing on this side, we go down to mesh and fill hole. We now have our loop coming around, and we have our solid faces going across. But what you'll notice is our inside has 5, and we're going to do something very simple. We're going to go down to our vertex mode. I'm going to lift the vertex here up and the vertex this side up. Okay, and what you'll find is we've actually created that circle. We have several points here, so we've got, I'm just going to bring this down, and I'm just going to bring this piece down, and I'm just going to bring this one in slightly and bring it up, and again just going to bring these three in and across a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to pull this one out, and you can see we have, go to our edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's what we want. But again, you may be thinking, well, actually, hang on a minute, we've got these 5 shapes. We're going to go down to our multi-cut tool, select that vertex, and push enter. Okay, and now we don't have that. We don't have that anymore. I don't actually like how far in that is from the front, so I'm going to go to vertex again, and I'm just going to pull that out. I'm just going to pull this one out as well, and the same over here. Just going to pull that one out, pull that one out. There we go, and we have a nicely flowing joint with a nice loop, which is exactly what we want. So again, I'm just going to pull this bit out as well. And yeah, I think that's looking cool. So again, we have this nice flow coming down here. We've got a nice flow coming out of our arm, leading down to the overall breast shape. And again, we can tweak that later on. It's not too much of an issue. And yeah, it's looking cool. So again, there is more that we can do to add to this. So I'm just going to bring this sort of down, bring it back out a little bit. Again, just take that down, bring it out a little bit, and at this point, I'm going to add. I mean, no, I think we'll leave it at that for now. In the next lesson, we're going to start looking at adding the arms. Okay, and hopefully, you have your shoulder piece looking really professional, looking really slick. What's important here as well when we start to sculpt out the arm is our edge flow is going to look really smooth, because we're going to have a lovely overlap between our shoulder coming around here and our arm coming around there, and they will overlap through each other, and that's exactly the type of edge loop that we want, where we have this loop coming around this way and it's being met by this loop coming around this way, which is going to help us later on in our animation. To get this smooth mode view, you can push 3, the number 3 on your keyboard, which will take it to a smoothing preview. If you push 2, it will do a half and half, and if you push 1, it will take it back to our base mesh. So yeah, this is where we should be at this point. In the next lesson, we're going to start adding our arms in. Please take time to practice. You know, when we're starting out, our first models always look horrible. As I've said before, everybody I know, models look horrible initially, and it's only through practice and lots of practice and patience that they will get better. So take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next